Hello humans, I have returned again to the interwebs in order to do a review on the 3%, which is, I originally saw it on Netflix. I'm not sure if it's on other networks, but it's a Brazilian thriller, and it was written by Pedro Aguilera. I could totally be butchering his last name, not completely sure, but that's a stretch. You could, it's on Wikipedia. They have an entire Wikipedia page and everything, so if you need, you can look it up. So yeah, I have all my notes written here that I want to go over. I'm going to go through every single episode. This video is probably going to be like 20 minutes. I'm hoping it's that short, but who knows. So first, I want to say that I really liked the show. I thought that it was very dynamic and different from what is currently out on television, and that's why I liked it. I really connect a lot with like the UK shows that I've been watching lately that are like totally different from what the shows that they're showing in like the US. I mean, like Divergent is kind of similar, but like not really kind of thing. So yeah, I really liked it, and I'm just gonna get into it. So this is a complete spoiler video, so if you are looking to watch the 3%, I suggest you stop it here at that one like kind of synopsis thing that I liked it and not watch the rest of the video. But if you don't care and you've already seen it and are looking for dialogue, then this is the right place for you. So first, there's two different areas in which one can live. There's the inland and then there's the offshore. The inland is for, it's kind of like, it looks kind of like slums style living. People are kind of in close quarters. The clothing that they wear is rag-like, and they don't seem to have a lot of resources from what I have seen. And there's not very much regulation. Like, there's examples where kids are living by themselves, which is like a whole another storyline, which I'll get into later. And then the offshore is for like this luxurious place. At the end, we get like kind of a glimpse of the offshore, which I was not satisfied with at all. I'll talk about later, but it's like super swanky, nice place for individuals who can make it there. Only the 3% can make it there. So I thought that was interesting. That was a very interesting number. And the 97% of everyone else and everything else lives in the inland. So in order to make it to the offshore, every year you have to be like 20-something years old. There's like an age bracket. You get to go through the process, which is a series of tests that occurs through, I guess, I'm not sure what the time frame is, but it's definitely over the course of a few days. And you go through a series of tests. There's mind tests. There's basic tests that test your like not really mobility, but your thinking skills, your critical thinking skills. And 3% of the people that try out to get to the process will actually make it. So, or get through the process will actually make it. So here's just a brief summary of all the characters. You should know them, but like, you know, it's a review. So Ezequiel is actually the person that runs the entire process, so he oversees everything. And then there's 4 other characters that I marked as main characters. So Joanna doesn't have any family, kind of lives on her own and provides for herself. She's become a thief in the process just so that she can make ends meet, and I found that interesting, and that mentality has helped her a lot throughout the process, so I kind of enjoyed making those connections too from their background stories. And then there's Fernando, who is physically disabled from the waist down, and they don't tell us exactly how he ended up being physically disabled. We just know that he is, and that it poses kind of like a semi-threat to the process, which we found out later is not the case. Then there's Tiago, who is not actually Tiago. Well, that's his real name, but he steals his brother Raphael's identity, and basically, in order to enter the process again, which I thought was like ridiculous, but he's a member of the Cause, and the Cause is basically like the stereotypical anarchist group. And I believe it's an anarchist group just because they don't want any like separation between any groups, any sects, any political status, and the offshore to them is seen as a way of separation that's not fair to the mass majority of people. So I found that interesting, that there exists a, cause. And Michelle is also from the inland, and she's another member of the cause, and her story is always really interesting. Like, it's kind of all over the place. We don't know what is true and what isn't true about Michelle, but we do know that she is with the cause and was diehard with the cause from the beginning. I don't know what's going to happen, if there's a season 2, what she's going to do, or what Tiago's going to do. I'm going to refer to Tiago as Raffaele for the remainder of this, but yeah. So the first episode is titled Cubes. This is basically when they all go into, the process building. They have to walk so basically inland is situated inside of this kind of like mountain. It's like if you were to carve out a mountain, like carve it downwards, they exist here, and then on top of this valley is where the process takes place. And it's kind of like this modern style building that they all have to go to in order to complete the process. So they end up going into the first kind of test is not really a test, it's more like an interview. And this is where majority, I think, of people are eliminated, and it's kind of like a way to like weed through people who are emotionally unstable, people who like want to go through the process for the wrong reasons, that kind of thing. That's kind of what I got out of it. And I found it really interesting, and this is a huge foreshadowing moment, and I don't know if anybody else noticed this, but when they say, okay, well, the process is going to present you with ways to deal with the trauma of not passing the process, and one of the main reasons that you can get past this is if you have a child. The joys of having a child are going to help get you through the failures. You know what I mean? So I was like, oh, that's interesting, that they tell the contestants that the joys of having a child are actually have a reversal effect on the emotions of trauma that you experience from not passing the process. Because you only get one time to pass, and if you don't pass, then you're just like, I'm living in the inland for the rest of my life. That's shitty. So I just thought that was interesting. Basically, that was the first episode. There was also another test where they had to put together, make 4 or 9 cubes out of like different geometrical shapes, and the first introduction with Raphael is basically when he steals another person's cube to make his total 9, and the other person gets eliminated, and the judge Ezequiel actually sees this occur. He sees this action, but he doesn't eliminate Raphael. So from that point forward, I was kind of thinking like, okay, this is not really what they make it seem. Like, it's not a perfect process, and there's lots of room for moral error, if that makes any sense. And then the next episode, episode 2, is entitled Coins, and the episode title comes from a test that they had where they had a number of coins that was not equal to the number of contestants participating, so one person needed to be eliminated, and they had to choose who gets eliminated. That was a really interesting game. So Joanna actually comes forward. This is when I found her interesting as a character, and she ends up, like, people end up rushing towards the coins just to take them when they didn't even know what the test entailed, and everybody had to put them back in because they thought that was unfair, not an everybody for themselves kind of game. They decided to like pull strings, and whoever got the short string was eliminated. So Joanna pulled the short string, but she had a coin, so she kept the coin that she had originally like picked up from the beginning and ended up passing through. So I thought that was kind of funny. I thought it was like definitely a test to her character as a human being and how she's had to, thieve her entire life to get through. So that has helped her in this competition. Like, on many occasions, you will see Joanna make it through tests that, like, only takes witting, cunning, and deceit in order to pass. So they have a medical examination occur during this episode as well, where Fernando realizes that he could actually walk again. Who knew? And this is weird. Michelle and Fernando start blossoming relationships, which is weird. It's very weird. I did not like that relationship at all. I felt like Michelle was all for herself. The way they met was clearly like she was trying to shut him up and she didn't want him to know that she was a part of the cause, because he started asking questions, and that was the first time that she'd kissed him. And so he felt like some type of weird emotional attachment to her, and she was just like, oh, like, honestly, I just want you to shut the fuck up, kind of thing. Episode 3 is entitled Corridor, and this episode was like probably one of the most interesting Twilight Zone like themed episodes. I loved Twilight Zone when I was younger. I used to watch it all the time. Like, I love the Twilight Zone. And I thought this test in particular was interesting because it kind of produced their worst fears right before their eyes. So, like, some type of apparition of their worst fears. And everyone had a different fear. Joanna had actually killed a child on accident. That was her worst fear. Fernando, what was his worst fear? I can't remember Fernando's. And Michelle was with the cause, so her fears related to that. And Rafael Tiago kept seeing Joanna saying that she was going to tell on him, because earlier in the season, the very first episode, I believe, no, it was episode 2, where she saw the stitches where he had replaced his identity chip, which I believe is what it is, just an identity chip to tell who you are and blah, blah, blah. And Joanna ended up getting everybody through that one. She recognized that there was gas coming through the ceiling, which is at the point where I realized Joanna was much more than a con artist. She actually had wit. She actually had reasoning and critical thinking skills that, like, far overreached her counterparts. Episode 4, entitled Gateway, is where they trapped the contestants in dorms. They at first gave them water and stuff, and then they took it away. So they had to go through this test where there was like a bunch of 110110110. You get the picture? And then there was a bunch of levers in each dorm, and they had to pull the levers down, coordinating with the 1 and 0 and the 1 and 0. 1 meaning that it went down, 0 meaning that it stayed up. And in order to do that, each time they would get 1 drink and 1 food source. And then they would have to continue to do this, and the levers were really hard to pull. And then once they'd ran out of food and everything, and they dumped all the food that they, had in storage, there was a group of men that had turned against everyone, led by another stupid man, and he got everybody to go to each dormitory and try and steal the food from those individuals. And some people would just, like, go along with it and blah, blah, blah. And then there was one girl that ended up dying because of it. Honestly, if I were in that situation, I would be in the same position as the girl, meaning that I wouldn't die. I mean, I'd fucking fight. I may die because of his friends that jump in, but, like, if it was me and him, it would definitely be a struggle of some kind. But yeah, I mean, it was very interesting. If I had to be anything else, like if I had a choice, I would have definitely found those individuals hiding that had made a barricade, and I would have joined them. But there's a lot of things where I'm, like, thinking, like, if I were actually in this process, like, what would be happening? But yeah, so that was interesting. And the 5th episode is entitled Water. This is an episode completely around Ezequiel and his wife, and how his wife had a child in the inland before she'd actually went through the process, and she'd saw this child on some video footage from their army commanders, blah, 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 wanted to go and save the child. Ezequiel ended up sending her to this resource center that, like, is a kind of rehab, kind of to reprogram your mind to make sure that you don't give a fuck about the people in the inland. And I thought that was interesting. She ended up killing herself in water, and I think it's also funny and foreshadowing that she had taught him this kind of technique where he were to like almost drown himself in water, which helped him connect the fact that what they're doing is a fine line between life and death. So I thought that was interesting. But I didn't feed too much into that episode because I'm just like, there's something seriously wrong with Ezekiel. I kind of knew that from the beginning. Episode 6 is entitled Glass, and it's where they have their individual tests. They have them within their new nice rooms. They're out of the dorms now, blah, blah, blah. I thought the individual tests were, like, intense. So Juana's test in particular was really intense. Like, that would totally fuck up my mind. Somebody's attacking her that she perceives is from the inland that wants her money, because the test is like, oh, you can go home with all this money or you can stay in the process. And I think that's like a mind fuck, because your parents come, anybody that you have a family tie with comes and will try to get you to go home with them, because you know that's a lot of money. And so there's a few contestants that left. Fernando wanted to leave. He's like, oh, you never have to preach again, we can buy a new house. His dad was a preacher, but his dad believed in the process so much that he stayed. So that was interesting. Rafael, Tiago's mom, ended up coming and being like, how could you steal your brother's identity, blah, blah, blah. And he's just like, if you tell anybody, I'll tell them that it was your idea. So basically she ended up leaving, and Tiago stayed in the process. So I thought that was interesting as well. Michelle was by herself, which I thought was like the easiest test of all. Like, you just have to make a choice by yourself. You don't have any family or anything. So, yeah. I mean, there's no mental fuck in that at all. Oh, I totally missed earlier in the episode, fucking Michelle killed one of her, like, childhood friends because she's with the process, and they ended up discovering that it was either between her, Michelle, or Bruna, which was a person that was from her same block in the inland, and she was like, basically like, oh yeah, like, whenever she comes back, we're both gonna attack her at the same time. I thought that was, like, so cunning, deceitful, and weird, although it is said that, you know, a cause for all can lose a few people, so I guess that was her philosophy in doing that, but, like, I don't even know how she was able to, like, go through the entire process like that, knowing that she'd killed somebody, basically. But, it's interesting. It was an interesting show. Episode 7 was entitled Capsule. Basically, they had made it through the process. They had, you know, basically passed everything, and they were having dinner with all of the higher-ups and people that actually were in charge of the process and making sure it ran smoothly. Michelle believed that Ezekiel had poisoned her brother, or killed her brother, sorry. So she tried to poison him, but Caesar, who was another higher-up, ended up getting poisoned, so it was like the wrong person, and then this whole thing happened where they were trying to figure out who did it. There was another character who I don't really think is all that important, but she was a reviewer for the council, and they basically pinned it on her because she wanted Ezekiel's position, which I feel like happens like a shit ton anywhere with people in power. And then the last episode, well, Michelle actually did the poisoning. There was an interrogation that occurred. She basically fucked that up and looked nervous the entire time. And she had the cut showing where she had removed the capsule on her side. It's like, Michelle is not the smartest. In my opinion, Michelle has just gotten through the test because of other people, like Fernando and Tiago and other people, other main characters. She hasn't really passed any tests, like, on her own. And then there's Button, which is the last episode. It's the purification ritual. You want to know where all this foreshadowing occurs? Holy shit. So in the first fucking episode where they tell you that, oh, you can go through therapy and get over this by having a child, blah, blah, blah. Having a child is so great. The fucking purification ceremony, the vaccine, which, you know, they have this open patch. Everybody from the offshore has an open patch where they have this, like, vaccine insert on their arm, whatever. So the purification ritual is basically a sterilization. So they can't have kids. So I'm like, what? And then I was like, my mind was just like, oh my god, this is truly a Twilight Zone type thing, unless you don't make these connections. Because I was like, it's totally a foreshadowing from the very first episode. Like, holy fuck. But anyways, everybody basically ends up doing it except Juana has her own weird test, which I thought was really fucked up. There's this guy from the inland that used to fuck with her because she was a thief, obviously. And then Ezekiel's like, oh, like, you need to kill this person to show that you really are, like, with us. And, like, you don't give a fuck about these people from the inland. And, like, you don't belong there, blah, blah, blah. And then she's like, yeah, like, I'm not doing that. And then he's like, yeah, you are just a piece of shit from the inland. And she's like, no, the inland was made for people like you who are disgusting, blah, 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 blah. It was like this huge scene that was like basically Juana screaming at the people in power, and she had no remorse in getting her shit and leaving, going through this entire process. Like, I would be like, see, this is when I like take a step back and I think about, once again, what would I do? Would you kill a man that tried to kill you, or would you like go home and say fuck the system? You know, isn't that really deep? So I don't know. In the context of this film, or this, it basically was like a film to me. I hope there's a season 2. Please be a season 2. In the context of this film, with the real world and everything else, I think it is really metaphorical of today's society and what we care about. It's like, to make your way up, you like really don't, and you can't give a fuck about anybody else but yourself. And if you want to be up there with those people that are in the 3%, you have to lose that sense of empathy on so many levels. It's not empathy as a whole, because not saying that people that are in the 3% are completely apathetic. However, they must. This is why in the offshore there's no killing ever that occurs. So there was a contestant that had jumped off the side of the railing in order to, I guess, reach the contestants that had made it, because he did not pass the interview process and he died. And one of the people that ran the process were so distraught about it, and like went to Ezekiel and was like, yeah, I like just saw someone's dead body today, and like she was just like, I don't know what to do, I don't know how to feel, kind of thing. I'm sure people die in the inland all the time, you know, so they just like kind of look like, you know, like that kind of thing. But she was just like, oh my god, like somebody died. So they lose that like sense that life is precious and life can be lost, and that we all bleed like each other and we all can die like each other, you know, we very much so can. And it's like almost like this untouchable society that like has never needed to feel anything other than, oh, the perfect offshore life, everything's perfect, there's so much justice here and everything like that. But the inland is almost the opposite. Everyone and everything must fend for itself, and is really much so about communities of individuals trying to exist and trying to survive. So I would like mark the inland kind of as the below working class families. So the families that have to spend out more than they make. The families that are constantly in debt and constantly bogged down with their, you know, everyday lives and everyday pressures. Those individuals. And I think that the 3% are the untouchables of society and life. And I would say that like the 3% and the individuals that run the process, I don't think they're horrible, terrible individuals, no, because I saw like emotion from Ezekiel when his wife wanted to do something about her child in the inland. It had nothing to do with everybody else down there. It was like, I just want my kid, you know, because it belongs to me. And that was, to me, yeah, you care about something in the inland, but it has an attachment to you. It still has something to do with you. I didn't see anybody in the 3% that had any emotional tie to the people in the inland, that felt any emotional connection to them. It was for the sole purpose of making sure that they dwindle down the population of contestants enough so that they find individuals that are worthy of making it to the 3%. And those individuals that make it to the 3%, even though they are from the inland, must lose all ties, all emotion, and all empathy to those who they are leaving behind, which I think is a part of that whole the whole individual test. I think that was a part of it. I think it was a part of Joanna's test at the very end, and I think that it was a part of the very fabric of this entire show, which is the point in which they reach everything in front of them. Either you reach sterilization, you can no longer have kids, or you can just go back to the inland. You know, I just thought that was really interesting, and it also paints a picture in front of me of the offshore world. I feel like if I were to paint a picture, it would be like, I mean, you can't have kids, so you can have sex with as many people as much as you want. You don't have to worry about having a baby. Obviously, you'd have to protect yourself, but like, you know what I mean? So I think that the offshore life is surrounded with pleasure and pleasing yourself, and like, pleasure is the driving force of wanting to get to the offshore. You want to feel okay, and you want to feel like you don't have to have those pressures, like, because when you don't have pressure on you from any material source like money or food or water, for instance, the world is at your disposal, and anyone that has that ability to distinguish between what you want and what you need to do, everything else that is left is what you want. You have no need to do what you need to do because you have everything you want. So your entire existence is based on pleasure and desire and things of that nature. So I thought that was interesting. I wish I would have gotten a view of the offshore to like see what, you know, it was like as far as like the structures and everything. I would imagine it's something like what we live in today, like cities that we live in today, because from the like horizon view, it like basically looked just like a city, you know, a city view. So yeah, that's my review of the 3%. I thought it was a great show, and like if I were to be in the process, I would probably make it through. From looking at each test, I can tell you who I would be and what I would be doing. I would definitely make it through the interview process. Coin's test, I would definitely make it through, because I don't get how you wouldn't be able to tell but yeah, I definitely make it through that. And Corridor, I would be the one that recognized the gas. Water, if I was Ezekiel's wife, she did it. She wasn't very smart about the way in which she tried to get out to go to the inland. Like, she like put on raggy clothes and tried to like leave through the gate, and there was like, she was obviously caught and like sent to freaking rehab. I would have been a lot smarter if I were to do that, if that makes any sense. I would have tried to contact individuals in the inland, offer them cash rewards to take care of this child, because you have the money at your disposal. In other words, with Glass, the individual test, I would have stayed in, I probably would have stayed in, honestly, because I'd made it all that way, and I knew you would have some type of idea that this test would be coming up, just to see if you were completely predisposed to the test. in Capsule, I would not poison somebody on the freaking, like, why then? And button, for the sterilization, that probably is the hardest thing for me, but I definitely would, because if you go back to the inland and you have a kid in the inland, it's worse. Even though everybody basically believed that you could go to the offshore and have babies, it's kind of like, either you go back to the inland and have a child that is stuck in that situation, or you go to the offshore and not have a baby but live a pretty decent life. Like, honestly, if I went to the offshore, I would find a way to train individuals. Like, I'd be like, okay, what could I do to get into the process, but in a way in which I'm like mainly, like, I live in the offshore, but I'm on the ground sometimes helping people with tests to get through the process, or potentially creating tests for the process. Because I believe that I was thinking of tests as I was watching the, show, that would have been much more for what they were looking for and for the individuals they were looking for. May have been fucked up, but a lot less fucked up, if that makes any sense. So, thanks for watching. Let me know what you all thought about the 3%, and I will see you all in my next video. Hopefully I'll be doing a review of the Cosmos soon. I want to do individual review videos on Black Mirror, so those will be coming up soon, and I will talk to you all in my next vid.